The warehouse sat in a quiet industrial area 3 miles from downtown, abandoned for 2 years after the previous tenant relocated. No for lease signs, no maintenance activity, just another vacant building in a district with high commercial vacancy rates. Nothing that would normally draw attention. But counterterrorism investigators had been tracking a cell for 7 months. Online communications monitored through court-authorized surveillance showed planning for a major attack. Encrypted messages discussed targets, timing, and methods. Decryption was partial. Analysts could identify that an attack was planned, but specifics remained unclear. Location, date, method. All were discussed in code that resisted full interpretation. The breakthrough came from financial intelligence. One cell member made a purchase that triggered alerts: large quantities of fertilizer and diesel fuel from agricultural suppliers in rural areas. The combination was flagged because of its use in previous bombing attacks. Individually, both materials were common and legitimate. Together, in quantities beyond what personal use would justify, they suggested bomb construction. Surveillance began immediately. The purchaser was followed to the warehouse. He entered through a service door, remained inside for 3 hours, left alone. Thermal imaging showed heat signatures inside the building suggesting multiple people and active equipment. The warehouse wasn't abandoned. It was occupied and operational. Over the next 2 weeks, surveillance documented 8 different individuals accessing the warehouse at various times. Some arrived alone. Others came in groups. All used the same service entrance. All stayed for extended periods. Deliveries were observed, unmarked vehicles bringing boxes and containers inside. The activity pattern matched a safe house or operational planning location. Communications intercepts intensified. The encrypted messages increased in frequency. Analysts detected urgency in the timing and volume of communications. Key phrases appeared repeatedly, phrases that previous intelligence had linked to imminent attack planning. Green light received, final assembly, 0 hour approaching. The cell was moving from planning to execution, but critical details remained unknown. What was the target? When was the attack scheduled? What method would be used? The warehouse location was 3 miles from downtown. Within that radius were shopping centers, office buildings, transit stations, entertainment venues, thousands of potential targets, tens of thousands of potential victims if the attack involved explosives constructed from the materials observed being delivered. Infiltration was impossible. The cell operated with extreme security consciousness. Members communicated through encrypted channels. Meetings occurred in secure locations with counter-surveillance measures. Attempts to place undercover operatives or informants had failed. The cell was closed and disciplined. Intelligence would have to come from surveillance and communications intercepts. The decision point came from a breakthrough in decryption. Analysts working overnight made progress on the encrypted communications. A message sent 18 hours earlier contained timing information. Schedule confirmed. Tomorrow. Midday rush. Maximum density. The attack was planned for the following day. Midday. A target with high crowd density during rush hours. But which target? Downtown had multiple high-traffic locations. Train station. Shopping district. Business plaza. Convention center. Without specific location intelligence, protecting all potential targets was impossible. The tactical option was to raid the warehouse, arrest the cell members, and seize whatever attack materials were present. Stop the attack by eliminating the attackers before they could execute. The tactical briefing was urgent. The raid needed to happen immediately. Morning hours. Before the cell could move to the attack location, federal counterterrorism teams coordinated with local SWAT units. The objective was to breach the warehouse, arrest all cell members, secure any explosive materials, and prevent the attack through decisive intervention. Intelligence indicated 5 to 8 people likely present in the warehouse based on surveillance patterns. Unknown weapons status, but assumption was all would be armed. Bomb-making materials were confirmed through the fertilizer purchase and other deliveries observed. Explosive ordnance disposal teams prepared for potential improvised explosive devices. Hazmat units stood ready for chemical threats. The raid was executed at 6 in the morning. 4 SWAT teams approached from different directions. The warehouse was isolated within 90 seconds. All exits secured. Surveillance drones confirmed heat signatures. 6 people inside the main warehouse space. All appeared to be in one area. No dispersal pattern suggesting they had detected the approach. The breach was simultaneous at 3 entry points. Flashbang grenades disoriented the occupants. SWAT teams entered with overwhelming force. Commands echoed through the warehouse space. The 6 individuals inside were secured within 45 seconds. All complied immediately when confronted with tactical teams. No shots fired, no resistance. They understood that fighting was futile. But the warehouse interior revealed the scope of the threat. The main space had been converted into a bomb-making workshop. Barrels of fertilizer-based explosive mixture, electrical components for detonators, timers, batteries, ball bearings for shrapnel, and 3 large vehicle cargo areas where devices were being assembled. The bombs were nearly complete. Wiring was connected. Timers were installed. Only final arming remained. EOD specialists moved forward carefully. The devices were assessed. Each cargo area contained a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. Pickup trucks loaded with barrels of explosive mixture. Shrapnel packed around the charges. Detonation systems ready for final activation. The blast radius of each device would measure hundreds of feet. The shrapnel would kill or maim anyone within that radius. 3 devices. 3 different targets potentially. Or 1 target with multiple devices for maximum devastation. The 6 arrested individuals were separated for immediate interrogation. Initially, all refused to speak. But tactical questioning and the overwhelming evidence convinced one to provide critical information. The attack was scheduled for noon, 4 hours away. The target was the downtown train station during midday commuter rush. All 3 vehicles were to be driven into different areas of the station complex and detonated simultaneously. The expected casualties were catastrophic. The train station served 50,000 commuters daily. Noon was peak period. The 3 devices positioned at different locations would maximize casualties. Conservative estimates suggested 500 immediate deaths from the blasts and shrapnel. Another 1,000 serious injuries. The station structure could collapse, trapping additional victims. Total casualties could exceed 2,000. The cell member providing information described the planning. Months of surveillance. Timing studies to identify maximum density periods. Vehicle selection for payload capacity. Construction of devices designed to defeat typical vehicle barriers. The attack was meant to cause mass casualties, create terror, and demonstrate that public transportation was vulnerable. But the raid had stopped it. 4 hours before execution. The bombs were seized before they could be deployed. The cell members were in custody. The attack that would have killed hundreds and injured thousands was prevented. The train station would operate normally that day. 50,000 commuters would travel through without knowing how close they came to being victims of mass murder. Federal investigators worked rapidly. The warehouse was processed as a crime scene. Evidence was documented. The bombs were carefully disassembled and rendered safe. The materials were cataloged. Enough explosive mixture to kill everyone within a 1,000-foot radius of each detonation point. The shrapnel. Thousands of ball bearings that would become projectiles traveling at lethal velocity through crowded spaces. Computers found in the warehouse contained planning documents. Surveillance photos of the train station. Diagrams showing optimal vehicle placement. Calculations estimating casualties based on crowd density and blast radius. The planning was detailed and sophisticated. The cell had approached the attack with methodical preparation. Communications records showed international coordination. The cell received guidance from overseas terrorist organizations. Financial support came through cryptocurrency transfers designed to obscure the source. The attack was part of a broader campaign. Other cells in other cities were planning similar operations. The downtown train station attack was meant to be the first of multiple simultaneous strikes designed to create nationwide panic. Federal coordination expanded immediately. Information from the warehouse raid was shared with counterterrorism units nationally. Other cells were identified through the communications records. Raids were coordinated across 5 cities. Within 24 hours, 4 additional cells were disrupted. 2 more vehicle bomb plots were discovered and stopped. 7 more individuals were arrested. The network was being systematically dismantled, but the immediate focus remained the prevented attack. The 6 cell members arrested at the warehouse faced federal terrorism charges: conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction, attempted murder of federal officers, material support to terrorism. Evidence was overwhelming: the bombs, the planning documents, the communications with overseas terrorist groups. Convictions were certain. Enhanced security was implemented at the train station and other high-traffic locations. Threat assessments were updated. Additional surveillance was deployed. Law enforcement presence was increased. But the public was not informed about how close they had come to a mass casualty attack. The decision was made to prevent panic while ensuring protection. The cell members eventually provided extensive information during interrogation. The network's structure, overseas contacts, funding mechanisms, recruitment methods. The intelligence gathered led to dozens of additional investigations. Preventing one attack generated information that would prevent many more. Explosive forensics examined the devices. The construction was sophisticated. The bombs were designed to defeat standard vehicle barriers. Timers were set for simultaneous detonation. Backup detonation systems ensured the devices would explode even if primary systems failed. The level of preparation indicated extensive training and expertise. International cooperation helped track the network's overseas connections. The communications led to terrorist operatives in 3 countries. Arrests were coordinated with foreign partners. Assets were seized. Training facilities were raided. The network that had planned the train station attack was disrupted globally. But the core achievement was the prevention. 4 hours before execution. 4 hours before 3 trucks loaded with explosives would have been driven to a train station filled with commuters. 4 hours before detonations that would have killed hundreds instantly and caused injuries and structural collapse that would have killed hundreds more. The warehouse raid stopped it. 6 arrests. 3 bombs seized. An attack that would have been one of the deadliest terrorist incidents in years was prevented through surveillance, intelligence analysis, and decisive tactical intervention. The train station operated normally that day. Commuters traveled through during the noon rush. 50,000 people moving through the facility going about their daily routines. None knew that 6 cell members had been arrested that morning. None knew that 3 vehicle bombs had been seized. None knew that without the raid, the station would have been devastated by simultaneous explosions designed to kill as many people as possible. The tactical teams debriefed. The operation had gone perfectly. Overwhelming force. Rapid execution. No casualties. All cell members arrested. All bombs secured. But the timing was what mattered most. 4 hours. The raid happened at 6 in the morning. The attack was scheduled for noon. 4 hours separated prevention from catastrophe. If the raid had been delayed until the afternoon, the bombs would have been deployed. The vehicles would have been driven to the target. The timers would have been set. Nothing could have stopped the detonations. If the raid had happened even 6 hours later, the station would have been destroyed and hundreds would have been killed. Instead, tactical teams breached the warehouse at dawn, found 6 people and 3 nearly completed bombs, arrested everyone, secured the devices, and stopped an attack that would have killed more people than any terrorist incident since the major attacks that changed national security forever. The warehouse was demolished after evidence processing. The site was cleared and left vacant. No marker indicates what happened there. The location where a terrorist cell assembled bombs intended to kill hundreds is just empty ground now. The memory belongs to the investigators and tactical teams who stopped the attack. The 6 arrested cell members were prosecuted federally. All were convicted. Sentences ranged from 40 years to life without parole. Appeals were denied. They would spend the rest of their lives in maximum security federal prisons. The message was clear. Planning terrorist attacks against civilians would result in permanent incarceration. Security reforms followed. Enhanced surveillance of fertilizer and explosive precursor purchases, improved information sharing between federal and local law enforcement, expanded counterterrorism resources. The case demonstrated that prevention required constant vigilance, sophisticated intelligence capabilities, and willingness to act decisively when threats were identified. But for the 50,000 commuters who used the train station that day, life continued normally. They traveled to work. They met friends. They went about their business. The station was crowded and busy. The noon rush was typical. Nothing seemed unusual because nothing unusual happened. Because at 6 that morning, SWAT teams had breached a warehouse. Because tactical operators had arrested 6 people. Because bomb technicians had secured 3 vehicle-borne explosive devices. Because investigators had worked for 7 months tracking communications and following leads. Because all of that happened, nothing happened at the train station. The prevented attack didn't make headlines. The public wasn't told. The decision was made to avoid creating fear while ensuring the threat was eliminated. The people who would have died never knew they were targets. The families who would have lost loved ones never experienced that loss. The city that would have been traumatized by mass casualty terrorism continued its normal rhythms. Because the warehouse raid happened 4 hours before the scheduled attack. Because 6 people were arrested before they could deploy 3 bombs. Because the tactical intervention stopped the attack at the final possible moment. After the bombs were built, after the timing was set, after the target was chosen, but before the vehicles could be driven to the location where detonations would kill hundreds. 4 hours. That's how close it came. 4 hours between a successful raid and a terrorist attack that would have been one of the deadliest in modern history. 4 hours between 6 arrests in a warehouse and 3 explosions at a crowded train station. The SWAT teams had executed the warrant. The warehouse was breached. The cell members were arrested. The bombs were seized. And 50,000 people went about their day never knowing that they had been targeted for mass murder and that tactical intervention 4 hours before the raid stopped the killing before it started, prevented the attack before vehicles could be deployed, arrested the cell before detonations could occur, and protected the public from a threat they would never know existed until years later when declassified reports would reveal how close the city came to experiencing a terrorist attack that would have killed hundreds, and the warehouse is gone. The cell members are in prison. The bombs are destroyed. And the train station continues to serve 50,000 commuters daily. The attack never happened because investigators tracked communications, surveillance documented the threat, and tactical teams executed a raid at exactly the right moment. Early enough to stop the attack, but late enough that all evidence and all cell members were present and could be captured. The investigation that led to the raid had been extensive. 7 months of monitoring encrypted communications. Analysts working around the clock decrypting messages and identifying patterns. Financial intelligence tracking suspicious purchases across multiple states. Surveillance teams documenting movements and activities while maintaining operational security. The work was invisible to the public but absolutely critical to preventing the attack. The cell had been careful. They used sophisticated encryption. They avoided known surveillance methods. They compartmentalized their operation so individual members knew only their specific roles. They conducted counter-surveillance to detect law enforcement attention. They planned the attack with meticulous attention to detail designed to maximize casualties while minimizing the chance of premature detection. But they made mistakes. The fertilizer purchase was too large to avoid triggering alerts. Communications patterns revealed operational tempo that analysts recognized as attack preparation. Surveillance detected the warehouse activity that shouldn't have existed in an abandoned building. Small errors that professional investigators identified and exploited to build the intelligence picture that led to the raid. The tactical execution was flawless. Multiple teams coordinating simultaneous breach. Overwhelming force that prevented resistance. Immediate securing of explosive materials to prevent detonation or destruction. Systematic arrest and separation of cell members for interrogation. The operation lasted less than 5 minutes from breach to full site control. Speed and precision prevented any opportunity for the cell to destroy evidence or trigger devices. The interrogations revealed the network's broader scope. This cell was part of a coordinated campaign. Multiple cities, multiple targets, multiple attack teams all preparing for a wave of simultaneous terrorist incidents designed to overwhelm emergency response and create nationwide panic. The train station bombing was meant to be the opening strike. Once it succeeded, other cells would execute their attacks over the following weeks. But the warehouse raid disrupted everything. The cell's arrest sent shockwaves through the network. Other cells went into hiding. Communications went silent. The coordinated campaign collapsed before it could begin. Follow-up raids based on intelligence from the warehouse seized prevented 4 other planned attacks. The entire operation, years in planning, was dismantled because one cell was caught 4 hours before execution. The prevented casualties were staggering when calculated across all the disrupted attacks. The train station bombing alone would have killed 500 and injured over 1,000. The 4 other planned attacks targeted similar high-density locations: shopping centers, sports venues, concert halls. Total casualties across all 5 attacks could have exceeded 3,000 deaths and 10,000 injuries. The warehouse raid didn't just stop one attack, it stopped a campaign that would have been the deadliest terrorist operation in modern history. 4 hours before noon. Before the scheduled execution of an attack planned for months. Before 3 truck bombs would have been driven into a crowded train station. Before simultaneous detonations would have killed hundreds. Before the nation would have faced another devastating terrorist incident. The raid happened. The cell was arrested. The bombs were seized. And the attack that would have defined a generation's understanding of terrorism was prevented through the coordinated efforts of intelligence analysts, surveillance teams, federal investigators, and tactical operators who breached a warehouse at dawn and found exactly what they needed to stop a mass casualty attack just hours before it was scheduled to occur. The legacy of the prevention-shaped counterterrorism strategy for years afterward. The case demonstrated the importance of monitoring fertilizer and explosive precursor sales, the value of sophisticated communications, intercept, and decryption capabilities, the need for coordination between federal and local law enforcement, the critical timing required, acting early enough to prevent the attack but late enough to capture all evidence and all conspirators. Training programs incorporated lessons from the operation. How to identify pre-attack indicators, how to coordinate complex tactical operations, how to process crime scenes containing explosive materials safely, how to interrogate terrorism suspects effectively. The warehouse raid became a model for counterterrorism operations because everything worked correctly and the result was complete prevention of a mass casualty attack. The train station installed additional security measures after the threat was neutralized. Vehicle barriers preventing unauthorized access to critical areas, enhanced surveillance systems, increased law enforcement presence during high-traffic periods. The improvements were implemented quietly without public notification of the specific threat that had been stopped. The goal was enhanced security without creating fear or disrupting normal operations. For the tactical teams involved, the operation remained a career-defining moment. They had participated in preventing one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in modern history. They had executed a high-risk raid flawlessly. They had secured dangerous explosive materials without casualties or accidents. They had arrested 6 individuals planning mass murder and ensured all would face justice. The operation represented everything counterterrorism work aimed to achieve: identification of threats, decisive intervention, and complete prevention of harm to the public.